In Britain, we are obsessed with the weather. On the few occasions where it is too cold, too wet, too hot, or too windy, it makes news headlines and is stowed away in the national consciousness. There is one weather event, however, that has been airbrushed out of our history, an event far more devastating than the much more publicised hurricane of 1987. A storm in January 1953 was the worst peacetime disaster of the 20th century, and was the greatest storm for hundreds of years. Starting off at sea, the storm blazed a trail of destruction 1,000 miles long. Over 2,000 people lost their lives and thousands more left homeless. The North Sea coastlines of Britain and Holland were decimated. One after another, communities were ripped apart and people drowned in their beds. 65 years after the Great Storm of 1953, this documentary aims to re-examine the events of that day by interviewing a survivor of the disaster that has become one of the greatest forgotten events of our history.
I've got the blues, I feel so lonely. I'd give the world if I could only make you
I visited the Heritage Centre in Dunstanton to speak to Terry Ashworth, who was 13 at the time of the floods, to ask about the impact of the 53 storms in the coastal town.
My name's Terry.
And on your age?
And my age, I'm afraid I was born in 1940. You can work it out for yourself.
So you were 13 at the time?
Yes.
How did the flood affect you as well as the people of Dunstanton?
Well, it was dynamic, really. It was right in the middle of winter. We were forecast a big storm, and it was really blowing, really blowing. But I wandered down as far as the town hall in the evening with my mum and dad, and watched the waves getting bigger. But you couldn't see it very well. It wasn't very well lit, but it was so very windy. And then until we went home, and in the morning it was chaos. There was absolute chaos.
Right.
Yeah.
So like that must have been like a very like traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And I apologise if I'm like bringing up bad memories.
Oh, not at all. No, not at all.
Where was the coastline like most hit?
It was down at the south end of Hunstanton, where there wasn't much prom.
Right.
It
So,
was
so that
before
was near like where the train station was.
Yes. It's the other side of the train station even, and there was all dunes leading onto the back of the beach, and so the tide, the big wave, was able to come right up and squirt all the dunes and hit the land.
You were alive during the floods.
Oh yes.
Like how did you like escape like the destruction?
Well, it didn't hit the rest of the town. It only hit the south beach.
Yeah.
And there were lots of Americans stationed down there because we got a big American base at Sculthorpe, and they were billeted down there or housed down there with the families. And there was ever so many of those killed. And it was when I went down in the morning, there were clothes and things right up at the tops of the telegraph poles. So there must have been a great big wave. I mean, there was still lots of water lying, but it went out. It wasn't the depth of water down there then. But there was lots of people looking around, looking for their relatives. And I used to ride some ponies that were down there, and we had to go around looking for these ponies, and found a couple of them had escaped to higher land, but 2 or 3 of them had died.
So like all of the damage was like at the military base.
Yes, well, on the beach, on where the people were housed. There wasn't a base down there. It was just housing, but they were very skimpy housing.
Thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure.
Talking with Terry was extremely interesting as it allowed me to gain a first-person perspective of the Great Storm. Thank you for watching my documentary.
At 6:30, the storm reached Snettisham and Heacham in Norfolk, killing 34 people. By 7 o'clock, Hunstanton was hit, leaving another 32 dead. In Lincolnshire and Norfolk alone, the storm had already claimed 100 lives. Still no warning had been given to those further down the coast.